Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about something pretty serious that unfolded in the news recently. I woke up to this actually, and it definitely is something pretty concerning. I don't think I would make a video on this if I wasn't personally concerned about the potential after effects of what could potentially be happening in just a few weeks. The vast majority of you watching my videos live in the United States, so the potential effects of this would definitely probably hit you. I mean, I can't really imagine a scenario in which, if things go as being said, your household wouldn't be affected by this unless you're just like so, I guess, out of touch from the average person or whatever that it just couldn't touch you. But if you didn't know, the United States government is tens of trillions of dollars in debt, okay? The United States holds a insane amount of debt. And basically, in order to kind of like keep the government functioning and everything, what they've been doing in like the last, I don't know, decade or so, is they've been pushing off the debt for another time, right? They're just kind of letting this whole thing snowball so that they can keep things going right now. And unfortunately, we are at the brink of that snowball hitting us, okay? That big gathering of all of this debt hitting the United States government and economy and causing what is being described as catastrophic effects and potentially another economic recession if this is to happen. So, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned lawmakers that the federal government will likely run out of cash and extraordinary measures by October 18th unless Congress raises the debt ceiling. The new estimate from Yellen raises the risk that the United States could default on its debt in a matter of weeks if Washington fails to act. A default would likely be catastrophic, tanking markets and the economy and delaying payments to millions of Americans. Quote, "It is uncertain whether we could continue to meet all of the nation's commitments after that date," Yellen wrote in a letter, adding that the projection is based on estimated tax payments. Previously, the Treasury Department estimated that it would run out of cash and accounting maneuvers at some point in October. The warning comes hours after Senate Republicans blocked a bill that would have suspended the debt limit. So essentially, a bill had been passed through the House of Representatives, one of the chambers of the legislative branch here in the United States, which this bill would have suspended the debt limit once again and would have averted a potential shutdown of the federal government, which we've actually seen multiple times in my lifetime at least. This was on Monday, so it did not advance to the Senate. If it did, of course, it would have been eventually passed on to the president to sign and become law and whatnot, but it was shut down by Republicans in the Senate. So the reasoning behind this is Republicans are basically saying that the Democrats have been acting alone and not being bipartisan in their efforts to address the debt limit, and it has basically left the entirety of Congress without any sort of, I guess, idea on how to keep the government open, and the threat of a potential shutdown for the government is looming right now in the coming days. So it is a pretty catastrophic, I guess, thing. Obviously, the federal government shutting down we've seen multiple times, but at the end of the day, man, it's not a good thing. And what we could potentially be seeing coming would mean that millions of Americans would not get their paychecks. From what I understand, this would include active members of the armed forces, so people in the military, and federal and government employees. So, you know, the people, the everyday people, especially who work for like, you know, the FBI or the government in some function may not be getting paychecks because obviously you can't fucking pay people when you don't have money. And if they don't raise this debt ceiling, the government's not going to have money in a matter of weeks. So this date in October is about 3 weeks away right now, okay? And that means, obviously, that within 3 weeks, we could be seeing some pretty fucking catastrophic stuff if efforts are not taken to address this problem. Yellen cautioned that the October 18th deadline is only an estimate because the federal government's cash flows are, quote, subject to unavoidable variability. She noted that the government's daily gross cash flow, excluding financing, averaged nearly $50 billion per day over the past year and has even exceeded $300 billion. Quote, "It is important to remember that estimates regarding how long our remaining extraordinary measures in cash may last can unpredictably shift forward or backward," Yellen wrote. Quote, "This uncertainty underscores the critical importance of not waiting to raise or suspend the debt limit. The full faith and credit of the United States should put at risk. The risk is that Congress runs out of cash earlier than expected, setting the stage for an accidental default." So let's go ahead and address the two real big things, at least that I'm thinking here. So first and foremost, a lot of this whole possibility seems very political. And I think that this highlights a very massive problem with the United States federal government in general. Now, I really don't care what you believe politically. I don't think that that matters. I think we can all really agree that our government is extremely fucking inefficient. It doesn't do the job that it's supposed to. They pull more tax dollars than they should be. and put it towards the wrong fucking things. And even though these people are multimillionaires who, deal with lobbyists paying them for shit and live a much better life than the average American does, these politicians can't just shut the fuck up and do the best thing for the country if that means that, they look bad as a Republican or they look bad as a Democrat. And it's pretty fucking insane that we're even at a point where we're literally risking a potential economic recession that would wipe out millions of Americans' jobs and livelihoods so that people with an R or a D next to their name can look cool to their fucking coworkers, okay? So this is the kind of shit that really does get on my nerves about being an American, okay? These are things that, you would think, given the history of the United States, from things like the Boston Tea Party and all of the protests and the history of standing up against a fucked up government that America supposedly has, you literally are witnessing this shit happen in real time, and Americans just don't give a fuck. I mean, when you look at the stock markets today, the Dow Jones was down, 1.6%, S&P 500 down nearly 2%, NASDAQ over 2.5% down, approaching the worst day since May for the stock markets so far, because everyone's freaking the fuck out about this, because this is obviously a massive deal. I mean, let's go ahead and see, I guess, what the analysts are saying according to CNN about the potential for an upcoming, I guess, catastrophe for the United States should this all be reality in a few weeks. A mild recession, according to analysts, would likely be the best case scenario in the event of a U.S. government default on debts, a limit the country is expected to reach next month and for which Congress must act to increase. The worst case scenario would involve downstream effects of potentially cascading job losses, a shutdown, and tens of billions in COVID-19 economic recovery aid, still set to be delivered, a near freeze in credit markets, and gross domestic product taking a tangible hit that could last for multiple quarters, aka about a year or more, okay, depending on how many quarters consecutively it lasts. There's 4 quarters in a year. If it lasts for 6, that's a year and a half, okay, so... Quote, no one would be spared, Maya McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, told CNN, quote, it would be such a self-imposed disaster that we wouldn't recover from at a time when our role in the world is already being questioned. If the Treasury defaults and the impasse drags on, the federal government would have to enact devastating spending cuts that would cause a cataclysmic situation for the economy, Moody's Analytics warned this week. Moody's estimates say that nearly 6 million jobs would be lost. The unemployment rate would spike back to nearly 9%, and stock prices would plummet by 1/3, wiping out about $15 trillion in household wealth. Failure to raise the debt ceiling in time could halt payments that millions of Americans rely on, including paychecks to federal workers, Medicare benefits, military salaries, tax refunds, Social Security checks, and payments to federal contractors. So, we're not really risking anything, right? Only the U.S. economy suffering its third, actually, fucking recession in the last 20 years. That wouldn't be too bad, right? In 2008, the bankers and Wall Street and these fucking massive corporations, they got all bailed out while everyday Americans lost their jobs, while your mom and dad lost their fucking house. In 2020, a global pandemic wiped out the global economy for a year. And then literally a year later, because of the government's inaction, their inability to fucking, run a fucking balanced spreadsheet, Google document to make sure that they're spending money better, or at least have fucking money in the bank to run the entire country, their inability to do that might lead to another one. Only a 9% unemployment rate, only $15 trillion in household wealth being gone, not a big deal, right? Now, obviously, as of right now, this is not set in stone. This is not a guaranteed economic recession best case scenario. The government still does have time to act on this, and I think as the deadline approaches, they're going to be more and more forced, I guess, to actually address this, hopefully, fucking hopefully, but knowing the idiots that run our country, I would not be surprised if this really got pushed all the way down and we ended up with these fucking problems. My thing is this is yet another, and I feel like at least a dozen times now, I've covered perfect examples of the U.S. government fucking sucking. But this is yet another time where we're watching the U.S. government fail under its own weight and fail to do what the people deserve and fail to fucking function as it's supposed to. It's yet another example of the critical issues that face the United States. The fact that, if we don't push our debt farther on down the road by a certain day, the whole economy might fucking literally fall apart tomorrow. Yeah, that's not a good reality that Americans live in, right? That's not a good thing. If every fucking year you have to have a let's imagine this is a Fortune 500 company. Let's say this is GameStop, okay? Let's say GameStop's got $30 trillion in debt or something crazy, right? And every year they just have a meeting with all the fucking bigwigs, who drive Rolls Royces and make $30 million a year, most of which is probably illegal money, or at least is gained in nefarious ways that should be illegal. Every year they have a stock meeting and they're like, hey, let's just push the debt on another year, you know what I'm saying? People would be like, yeah, that company's gonna fall apart tomorrow. That's not good. You shouldn't have that problem. But when the US government does it, we call it propping our fucking economy back up. So how long until the real issue comes along? How long until the debt becomes an issue regardless of us pushing it along? You know what I mean? What the fuck's gonna happen? At the end of the day, man, this is the type of shit that people need to be more mad about. And yeah, it trended on Twitter or whatever here, but people don't even understand what the fuck is going down. A memo circulated by the White House last week for state and local officials listed several key programs that would be halted if Congress fails to increase the debt limit, including disaster relief efforts, Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, infrastructure funding, education, public health, and child nutrition. Quote, if the U.S. defaults and can no longer pay the obligations, billions of dollars in state aid and state-run but federal-funded programs could be halted. The ensuing market meltdown would crash the retirement savings of countless families and jack up the cost of borrowing for mortgages, car loans, and businesses of all sizes. All of this would threaten to short-circuit the incomplete economic comeback from COVID, igniting a new recession that would require yet more federal borrowing to recover from. Faith in the U.S. debt, the linchpin of the global financial system, would be tarnished, perhaps irreversibly. In short, it would be an epic disaster for everyday Americans, and one caused by extreme political dysfunction. Not a big deal, right? The government just can't pay for things like disaster relief efforts if a fucking natural disaster occurs. Medicaid, not a big deal. Children's health insurance, fuck them, right? Fuck them kids. Infrastructure funding, so we have roads to drive on, and we have fucking highways to travel goods through and shit like that. Yeah, who needs infrastructure in a country of 330 million people? Who needs a fucking infrastructure to keep a country running? The world's largest economy doesn't need a national infrastructure, right? Fuck all that. Education? Come on. Kids want to play Fortnite as is. We don't need public health. Fuck you. You want healthcare? Kiss our ass. We've already been pissing that one away for the last 300 years. Child nutrition? Yeah, you let the kids eat Happy Meals, okay? Fuck them. We've already been ruining child nutrition for since fast food existed anyway. It's insane that this is even a possibility in what's supposed to be the greatest country on earth, Americans, we're so proud of our country, right? When anyone attacks the U.S., in any way, whether it's literally in person or if it's on Twitter, Americans rise the fuck up for the occasion, but we literally live in a country where the people who run it can't even make sure the fucking lights will be on tomorrow. They can't prevent the only third massive economic recession since I've been alive. It's absolutely ridiculous, man. So with that being said, though, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. That is if you have fucking money next month, you know what I'm saying? But with that being said, this is Optimus. Well, not even surprised, I don't think, and signing out.